I didn't think anything about the job title when I took it. Just another repaint. Just another living room. I was already rolling primer up the wall when I realized the story wouldn't let me stay that simple. The room smelled like fresh paint and old books. Not dusty old. Read old. Paperbacks stacked in loose towers near the windows, spines bent from use. Afternoon light slanted in through half-open blinds, cutting the room into bright strips and shade. I was halfway up the ladder when she came back in from the kitchen and said my name like she already knew how it sounded. "Careful," she said. "That wall's still wet." I froze with the roller midair. She was closer than I expected. Close enough that I could feel the cool of the wall behind me through my shirt. Still tacky, still drying. She hadn't touched me. Not really. But she hadn't stepped back either. I muttered something about having it under control. She smiled like she didn't believe me. That was the moment. Not dramatic. Not obvious. Just a pause that stretched too long for a normal weekday afternoon. I'm in my 20s. I do this kind of work between other things. Painting, repairs, whatever keeps the lights on. She was the homeowner. Mid-40s, maybe a little older. Hair pulled back in a way that looked careless but wasn't. Bare feet on hardwood floors. No makeup that I could tell. She moved like someone who'd stopped worrying about being seen a long time ago. "Coffee?" she asked, already turning toward the kitchen. I said yes too fast. She handed me a mug with a small chip in the rim. Black coffee. No question about sugar or cream. I noticed that. The way she assumed, and the way she was right. I took a sip and burned my tongue. She watched me do it and laughed, quick and quiet, like she didn't want to make a thing of it. "You don't have to rush," she said, nodding at the wall. "I like when people take their time." I went back to work, but my focus slipped. Every small sound felt louder. The brush rinsing in water. Her footsteps crossing the room. A chair scraping softly as she moved it out of my way. Once, she reached past me to open a window, her arm brushing my shoulder. Just a second. Still, I forgot what I was saying mid-sentence and didn't bother finishing. She asked questions without prying. How long I'd been painting. Where I learned. If I liked it. I gave half answers. She didn't push. Instead, she filled the space with little observations. How the light changed in the afternoon. How this color was warmer than the last one. How she'd put off repainting for years because it felt like admitting something was over. I didn't ask what she meant. I just nodded, roller moving up and down, pretending I was listening to the wall. At one point, I stepped back too fast and felt the wet paint against my spine. I cursed under my breath. She was right there again, hand up, stopping me before I leaned any further. "Hold still," she said. Her fingers hovered near my shirt, careful not to smear the paint more. Her face was close enough that I could see the faint lines at the corners of her eyes. Not hidden, not apologized for. She smelled like soap and coffee. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she stepped away and said, lightly, "I warned you." I finished the wall, cleaned up, packed my things. Normal ending to a normal job. Except it wasn't normal anymore. As I walked out, I glanced back at the living room, at the pale, drying wall with my uneven edges and fingerprints that would disappear by morning. I keep thinking about how she didn't touch me, how she didn't need to. I came back 2 days later to finish the trim and touch up the ceiling line. She hadn't asked for me specifically. At least, that's what the office said. Still, when she opened the door and saw it was me, something crossed her face. Not surprise. More like recognition she hadn't prepared for. "Oh," she said. Then, after a beat, "Hi." She'd changed the room already. Furniture pushed back. Drop cloth folded too neatly to be mine. The books were gone from the window. The light felt different without them, sharper somehow. She stood to the side and let me in, arms crossed loosely, like she didn't quite know what to do with them. "You didn't have to come so early," she said. I checked my watch. "It's almost 10. She smiled, but it didn't land. "Right. Of course." We didn't talk much at first. I set up my ladder. Stirred paint that didn't really need stirring. She busied herself in the kitchen, opening and closing drawers, the quiet clink of a spoon against a mug. Every now and then, I'd catch her watching me from the doorway. When our eyes met, she looked away too quickly, like she'd been caught doing something private. She felt different this time. More contained. like she decided on a line and was determined not to step over it. At one point, she handed me a rag without a word. Our fingers touched. She flinched. It was subtle, but I saw it. Her hand pulled back like she'd brushed something hot. "Sorry," she said immediately, even though she hadn't done anything wrong. "It's fine," I said. "Really?" She nodded, then stayed standing there, not leaving, not speaking. Her hands worried the hem of her sweater. I noticed the faint smudge of paint on her thumb from last time. She hadn't scrubbed it off. Or maybe she had, and it came back. I didn't know why that mattered, but it did. "You do this a lot?" she asked suddenly. "Work in people's houses, I mean." "All the time." "Does it ever feel?" She stopped. Took a breath. "Never mind." I waited. She didn't continue. Later, she laughed at something I said about bad ceiling lines, and the laugh surprised her. It came out softer than she meant it to, like it belonged to another version of her. She covered her mouth, embarrassed, then dropped her hand and sighed. "Sorry. I'm more tired than I thought." "You don't have to apologize," I said again. She looked at me then. Really looked. Her eyes held mine a second longer than necessary. I saw something there I hadn't seen before. Not interest. Not exactly. More like a question she didn't want answered. I finished up earlier than planned. As I packed my tools, she leaned against the doorframe, arms folded again, posture tight. "Thank you," she said, "for being careful. With the paint." She shook her head slightly. "With me?" I didn't know what to say, so I nodded. As I stepped outside, she touched my arm. Just briefly, like she'd changed her mind halfway through. "Drive safe," she said. I walked to my truck with that spot still warm, wondering why it felt like something had almost happened, or almost stopped. The third time wasn't planned. It was raining hard enough that the street outside her place looked blurred, like the world had decided to soften its edges. I was halfway home from another job when my phone buzzed. Her name. Just her last name. Actually, the way it showed up in the system. Still, my chest tightened like it knew better. "There's a leak," she said. "From the ceiling." "I'm sorry to call so late." I checked the time. Past 8. I told her I could stop by. I didn't say I'd already been thinking about her living room. The way the paint had dried unevenly near the window, the faint print of my hand I'd sworn I could still see. She met me at the door with a towel over her shoulder. Her hair was loose this time, damp at the ends, like she'd just showered or meant to. The house felt quieter at night. No traffic noise. Just rain and the soft hum of a lamp she'd left on. The leak was minor. A loose seal. Something I could fix in 15 minutes. Still, she stayed close as I worked, holding the flashlight even when I didn't need it. "You don't have to hover," I said, trying to smile. "I know," she said. I don't like not knowing what's happening." The rain got louder. Somewhere in the back of the house, her phone started vibrating. She glanced at it, face tightening, and let it buzz until it stopped. "You can take that," I said. She shook her head. "It's fine." A minute later, it rang again. She swore softly and answered, turning away from me, but not moving far enough for privacy. I caught fragments. A man's voice, sharp even through the ring. Her shoulders stiffened. "I told you," she said quietly. "This isn't the time." She listened, closed her eyes. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier, colder. "Please don't do this." She ended the call and stood there longer than necessary, phone still in her hand, knuckles white. "I'm sorry," she said without turning around. That was old noise. I didn't ask. I focused on the pipe, on tightening something that didn't really need tightening. I could feel her behind me, closer now. Too close to be accidental. "Does it ever get easier?" she asked suddenly. "What?" "Letting go of things you thought were settled." I wiped my hands on my jeans, turned to face her. She looked tired in a way I hadn't noticed before. Not sleepy, worn down, like she'd been holding herself together all day and the rain had finally loosened something. "I don't know," I said. "I think you just get better at carrying it." She laughed once, short and humorless. "That sounds about right." The power flickered, then steadied. The room felt smaller after that. She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her shampoo, something clean and faintly citrus. Her fingers brushed my wrist as she handed me the towel, then didn't pull away. For a second, neither of us moved. Her eyes dropped to my mouth. Mine did the same to hers before I could stop myself. I thought about all the reasons not to. The job, the difference in years, the way she'd flinched before. She inhaled, sharp, like she was about to say something important. Then her phone buzzed again. She stepped back immediately, hand falling to her side, the moment collapsing in on itself. I should let you finish, she said too quickly. I fixed the leak. Packed up. We stood by the door, the rain still coming down hard. Thank you, she said. I nodded, my hand on the knob, wondering what would have happened if the phone had stayed silent just a few seconds longer. I didn't go back for a week. Not because there wasn't work. There was always work. But I started taking the long way home on purpose, avoiding her street like it might notice me looking. I told myself that was restraint. That was me being responsible. Then the office called. Said she'd asked if I could stop by. Something about a loose outlet plate. Nothing urgent. I showed up near dusk. The light in her living room was low, lamps instead of overheads. The wall I'd painted looked finished now. Smooth. Innocent. Like it had never caused trouble. She didn't offer coffee this time. We stood there for a moment, just inside the door, both of us waiting for the other to move first. She looked composed. Too composed. Hair pulled back again. Shoes on, like she might leave at any second. I don't actually think the outlet's loose, she said finally. I nodded. Okay. Neither of us laughed. I crouched anyway, unscrewed the plate, adjusted it a millimeter just to give my hand something to do. I could feel her watching me. Not casually. Like she was trying to memorize something before it disappeared. Can I ask you something? She said. Yeah. She didn't speak right away. When she did, her voice was quieter than usual. Does this ever feel strange to you? I stayed crouched. What does? This, she said, gesturing vaguely at the room. At us. You coming here. The way it's shifted. I stood up slowly. Met her eyes. She didn't look away. I've noticed it, I said. Her shoulders dropped a fraction, like that answer cost her something. Good. I was worried it was just me. The silence that followed felt heavy, not awkward. Loaded. The kind you don't rush because you're afraid of what fills it. I keep telling myself I'm imagining things, she said. That I'm bored, or lonely, or projecting. I'm very good at explaining things away. I swallowed. And is it working? She shook her head. Just once. I don't want to do something careless, she said. I've done enough of that already. I didn't ask with who. I didn't ask when. I could hear the history in her voice without details. I don't want to be a mistake, I said before I could stop myself. Her breath caught. She stepped closer, then stopped. The space between us felt deliberate now. Measured. That's not what this is, she said. Then, softer, that's not what you are. She looked tired again. Not physically. Emotionally. Like she'd been holding a door shut with her whole body. I don't know what I'm doing, she said. I just know I can't pretend this is nothing anymore. Neither of us moved. No touching. No leaning in. Just eye contact that lasted too long to be safe. I think, she added, voice barely above a whisper, that if we don't name it, it's going to name us. I stood there, tools in my hand, job finished, heart nowhere near done, realizing that whatever this was, silence wasn't protecting either of us anymore. The shift didn't come with a fight or a kiss. It came with a box. I was there to repaint a small patch near the hallway, a shadow where a frame had hung too long. She brought the box out from the closet like she'd already decided something and didn't want to give herself time to undo it. Can you hold this? She asked. It was heavier than it looked. Cardboard softened at the edges, taped and retaped. I set it on the dining table while she pulled the frame off the wall. Behind it, the paint was darker, untouched by sun. She stared at the outline for a moment too long. I should have moved that years ago, she said. Inside the box were photos. Not organized. Just stacked. Some bent, some curled. She picked one up without looking at it first, like she already knew what it would be. That's him, she said, then corrected herself. Was. She handed it to me. A man about my height. Older than me by a decade, maybe more. Same dark hair. Same crooked smile, like it didn't quite trust itself. He had his arm around her, both of them squinting into sunlight. I'm not trying to make a comparison, she said quickly. I hate when people do that. I didn't say anything. I know. She smiled faintly. You didn't have to. She leaned against the table, fingers resting on the edge like she needed the contact. He died 5 years ago. Not suddenly. Just thoroughly. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't rush to fill the space. The room felt smaller again, but in a different way, like it was holding its breath. I loved him, she said. But loving him was work by the end. Being needed all the time, even when I was empty. She exhaled slowly. You don't do that. Do what? Need me? She said. You just show up. Do your job. Leave space. I looked down at the photo again, then back at her. I don't think that's entirely true. She met my eyes. Something flickered there. Not fear. Recognition. That's what scares me, she said. She reached into the box again and pulled out her phone. Tapped the screen, hesitated, then handed it to me. A voicemail queued up. Her thumb hovered, then pressed play. A man's voice filled the room. Tired. Apologetic. Saying her name like it was something he'd already lost. She took the phone back before it finished. I keep that, she said, to remind myself how easy it is to go back to something familiar, even when it hurts. She folded the photo carefully and put it back in the box. Closed the lid. Sat on it like she was anchoring it to the floor. I don't want you to be a replacement, she said. Or a reminder. Or a regret. I stepped closer, then stopped. Let the distance stay what it was. I don't think I could be, I said, even if I wanted to. She looked up at me, eyes shining but steady. That, she said softly, might be the problem. It didn't happen all at once. Nothing dramatic followed the box. No late-night texts. No sudden urgency. If anything, things slowed down. She stopped calling for small fixes. I stopped finding reasons to drive past her street. We both noticed the space and didn't rush to close it. When she asked me over again, it was daylight. Clear. Ordinary. She said she'd finished clearing out the closet and wanted help putting the shelves back up. I said yes without asking why they couldn't do it herself. The house felt lighter. Emptier. Not lonely. Just honest. We worked side by side without much talking. Measuring. Drilling. Handing tools back and forth. At one point, she steadied the ladder with one hand, the other resting loosely at her side. I noticed how relaxed her fingers were now. No fidgeting. No tight grip. You don't have to be careful today, she said quietly. I glanced down. About the paint? She smiled small. About me. I didn't answer right away. I tightened the last screw, climbed down slowly. We stood facing each other, close enough that it would have been easy to reach out. Easier than before. I'm still careful, I said. Just not scared. She nodded. That's fair. We moved to the couch after. Not because there was anything left to do, but because neither of us left. She sat first, leaving space without making a show of it. I took the other end. The distance felt intentional. Temporary. I keep waiting for this to feel like a mistake, she said, staring ahead. And it doesn't. I keep waiting for you to push me away, I said. And you don't. She laughed softly. Not surprised this time. I don't want to rush into a version of this that breaks, she said. I don't have the energy for that. I don't want to be something you have to recover from, I said. She turned then. Looked at me the way you look at someone when you're done pretending you don't already know. Then we don't rush, she said. And we don't disappear. That felt like the truth. Simple. Heavy. Enough. She shifted closer. Not much. Our knees touched. She didn't pull back. Neither did I. After a moment, her hand moved, resting on the cushion between us. Open. Waiting. I placed my hand next to hers. Didn't grab. Didn't lace fingers. Just contact. Skin to skin. Warm. Real. She leaned her forehead against my shoulder and exhaled like she'd been holding that breath for years. I stayed still, letting her decide how long it lasted. We sat there as the afternoon light moved across the room, the quiet no longer sharp or loaded. Just shared. When I finally stood to leave, she squeezed my hand once. A promise without language. See you soon, she said. Not a question. And this time, I believed it. I'm telling this from a different place now. Not years later. Not with everything figured out. Just far enough away to see the shape of it. We didn't announce anything. No moment where we crossed some invisible line and suddenly became a story people would label. We kept seeing each other in small, ordinary ways. Coffee that went cold because we talked too long. Dinners that stayed simple. Walks that didn't need a destination. She still had her life. I still had mine. The difference was we stopped pretending those lives didn't overlap. What changed first was the quiet. The silence between us stopped feeling like a test. It became somewhere to rest. She no longer filled it with explanations. I stopped watching her for signs she might pull away. We learned each other's rhythms slowly, respectfully, like you do when you don't want to break something you can't replace. She told me more about him, eventually. Not all at once. Just pieces. How grief doesn't move in a straight line. How guilt can disguise itself as responsibility. I didn't try to fix any of it. I just listened. That seemed to matter more than anything I could have said. I changed too. I stopped mistaking intensity for connection. Stopped believing that wanting something badly meant I deserved it immediately. Being with her taught me patience in a way no lecture ever could. Careful didn't mean afraid. It meant present. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me when she thought I wasn't looking. Not like before. Softer. Like she was surprised she'd let herself arrive here. When I noticed, she didn't look away anymore. The wall in her living room still looks the same. The paint's settled. The edges cleaned up. But every time I pass it, I remember how close I came to leaning back into something unfinished. How restraint, at the right moment, can be its own kind of courage. We never pressed each other into anything. Not walls. Not promises. We chose, again and again, to stay. And that was the part one didn't expect to learn. That love doesn't always announce itself with urgency. Sometimes it shows up quietly, asks if there's room, and waits to be invited in. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?